Maria Alvarez checked the address on her phone one more time before pulling her decade-old Honda Civic to the curb. 1847 Oakwood Drive. The house loomed before her, a stately Victorian with dark green shutters and immaculately maintained gardens. In Danville's most affluent neighborhood, it stood as a testament to old money and quiet luxury. At 42, Maria had been cleaning homes for nearly 15 years since immigrating from El Salvador. She prided herself on building a respectable client list through word-of-mouth recommendations. This new addition, the Henderson estate, came through Mrs. Blackwell, whose home she'd cleaned for 7 years. "They're looking for someone discreet," Mrs. Blackwell had said, handing her a business card with a phone number scrawled on the back. The last girl quit suddenly. Something about the hours not working for her. Maria grabbed her caddy of supplies from the trunk and approached the front door. She didn't mind the hours issue. The Hendersons needed someone 3 times a week, including a late evening clean on Fridays when they hosted their weekly dinner parties. The extra pay for night hours would help with her son Miguel's college applications. The heavy oak door swung open before she could knock. A tall, slender woman with silver-streaked dark hair and pearl earrings greeted her with a practiced smile. "You must be Maria. I'm Eleanor Henderson." Her handshake was brief but firm. "Please come in." The foyer opened to a grand staircase and hardwood floors that gleamed under recessed lighting. Family photos lined the walls. Mr. and Mrs. Henderson, their adult children, vacations on pristine beaches. "Jonathan is at work, but he looks forward to meeting you next time," Eleanor said, leading Maria through the house. "We've been without help for nearly 3 weeks now. Terribly inconvenient." Maria nodded politely as Eleanor outlined her duties, mentally noting the size of the rooms, the antique furniture that would need special attention, the numerous bathrooms. "And this," Eleanor said, stopping before a closed door at the end of the upstairs hallway, "is the attic space. It's mostly storage, old furniture, holiday decorations, that sort of thing. No need to clean up there." Maria noticed a slight change in Eleanor's tone. "Is there anything else I should know about the house, Mrs. Henderson?" Eleanor seemed to consider the question for a moment. "It's an old house built in 1901. It makes noises sometimes, especially at night when it's cooling down. Don't be alarmed if you hear the occasional creak or groan during your evening shifts." "Of course," Maria replied. "Old houses always had their quirks." Eleanor handed her a set of keys. "The alarm code is 1847, same as the address. Easy to remember. You can let yourself in when we're not here." She hesitated, then added, "We'd prefer you finish by 10 p.m. on your evening shifts. The house should be empty after that." As Maria began her work in the kitchen, she couldn't help but feel a subtle unease. Something about Eleanor's demeanor, the slight tension around her eyes when she mentioned the attic, the oddly specific instruction about leaving by 10 struck her as unusual. By the time she'd finished the downstairs areas, the sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows through the tall windows. She moved upstairs, methodically cleaning each room. As she vacuumed the hallway outside the master bedroom, the machine suddenly stopped. Maria checked the plug securely in the outlet. She examined the hose for clogs, finding nothing. Then she heard it. A soft, barely audible sound coming from the attic door. A laugh, high-pitched and brief, like a child delighted by a secret joke. Maria froze, vacuum forgotten. She waited, listening intently. Nothing but silence. She must have imagined it. Or perhaps it was just the house settling, as Eleanor had mentioned. Old houses and their quirks, indeed. By her 3rd week cleaning the Henderson home, Maria had established an efficient routine. Mondays and Wednesdays were standard day shifts, while Fridays extended into the evening to prepare for the Hendersons' dinner parties. She'd met Jonathan Henderson, a distinguished man in his early 60s with a perpetual expression of mild concern on his face. He was polite but distant, often retreating to his home office during her visits. Their interaction was limited to brief nods and occasional small talk about the weather. That Friday, Maria arrived at 2 p.m. to begin preparations for the evening's gathering. Eleanor had left a detailed list of instructions. Polish the silver. Arrange fresh flowers in the dining room. Ensure the guest bathroom was stocked with hand towels. "We'll be hosting 12 tonight," Eleanor had explained earlier that week. "The usual crowd plus the new hospital board members. Everything needs to be perfect." Maria worked diligently throughout the afternoon. As the grandfather clock in the hall struck 7, she heard the Hendersons return, voices low as they prepared for their guests. "Maria?" Eleanor called, finding her arranging roses in the dining room. "We're heading out for a quick errand. The caterer should arrive in about 20 minutes. Could you let them in?" "Of course, Mrs. Henderson." The house fell silent after they left. Maria moved to the kitchen to finish wiping down the countertops when a distinctive click echoed from upstairs, the sound of a door unlatching. She paused, listening. Footsteps. No, just the faint hum of the refrigerator and the ticking of the clock. The caterers arrived promptly, a flurry of activity as they set up their equipment. By 9, the house was filled with well-dressed guests, the murmur of conversation punctuated by occasional laughter. Maria slipped quietly through the crowd, gathering empty glasses and straightening throw pillows. No one paid her much attention. She was part of the background, invisible yet essential. By midnight, the last guests had departed. Eleanor, slightly flushed from wine, pressed a generous tip into Maria's hand. "You've been wonderful," she said. "We won't keep you any longer." Maria gathered her supplies, noticing Jonathan watching her from the study doorway, his expression unreadable. "Good night, Mr. Henderson," she called. He nodded stiffly. "Lock the door behind you, please." The drive home was quiet, the streets of Danville nearly empty. Maria's apartment was dark when she arrived. Miguel was staying overnight at a friend's house for a study session. She was nearly asleep when her phone chimed with a text message. The screen showed an unknown number. "Did you lock up properly?" Maria sat up, suddenly alert. "Who is this?" She typed back. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. No response came. She tried to dismiss her unease. Probably Eleanor. Checking from a phone Maria didn't recognize. She'd confirm in the morning. When she arrived for her Monday shift, neither Henderson mentioned any text. Maria nearly brought it up, then thought better of it. Perhaps it had been a wrong number after all. The day proceeded normally until she began vacuuming the upstairs hallway. Once again, the machine died unexpectedly. Maria sighed, checking the plug and hose. As she knelt beside the vacuum, that same high-pitched laugh drifted down the hallway, this time louder, unmistakable. It seemed to come from behind the attic door. Maria stood slowly, heart racing. "Hello?" she called. Silence. Gathering her courage, she approached the attic door. Her hand hovered over the knob. "Maria?" She jumped, turning to find Eleanor watching her from the master bedroom doorway. "Is everything all right?" Eleanor asked, her voice carefully neutral. I thought I heard something," Maria admitted. From the attic, a shadow passed over Eleanor's face. "It's probably just the house settling, or perhaps a squirrel on the roof." She stepped forward, positioning herself between Maria and the attic door. "I wouldn't worry about it." But as Maria drove home that evening, she couldn't shake the memory of that laugh, childlike yet somehow wrong, too knowing, too deliberate. And she couldn't forget the flicker of fear she'd glimpsed in Eleanor Henderson's eyes. The following Friday brought a change to the routine. Eleanor called Maria that morning, her voice strained. "I hate to ask this," she began, "but we have an emergency situation with Jonathan's mother. We need to drive to Philadelphia immediately. Would you be willing to come in the evening as usual, even though we won't be hosting?" "Of course," Maria replied. "Is everything okay?" "Just an elderly woman's drama," Eleanor said dismissively, "but we can't ignore it. The alarm code remains the same. If you could just do your regular cleaning and lock up afterward, we'd be very grateful." Maria arrived at the Henderson home at 6 p.m. The house felt different without its owners, quieter, more watchful. She moved methodically through her tasks, trying to ignore the growing sense of unease. By 9:30, she had finished everything except the upstairs hallway. The vacuum cleaner sat where she'd left it on Monday, its cord coiled neatly. Maria hesitated, then plugged it in, bracing for it to fail. To her surprise, it hummed to life normally. She worked efficiently, eager to finish and leave. As she was wrapping the cord, she glanced at the attic door. It remained firmly closed as always, but something about it nagged at her. In the 3 weeks she'd been cleaning the house, she'd never seen it open. What exactly was stored up there that required such privacy? Maria checked her watch, 9:52 p.m. The Hendersons weren't expected back until tomorrow. No one would know if she took a quick peek. Before she could reconsider, she approached the door and turned the knob. It opened smoothly, revealing a narrow staircase disappearing into darkness. Maria fumbled for a light switch, finding one just inside the doorway. A dim bulb illuminated the stairs. "Hello?" she called, feeling foolish. Of course no one was there. She climbed slowly, each step creaking beneath her weight. At the top, the attic opened into a large space with sloped ceilings. Dust motes danced in the beam of light from the single bulb. As Eleanor had said, it was mostly storage boxes labeled Christmas, old furniture draped in sheets, trunks with tarnished brass fittings. But at the far end of the attic stood something unexpected. A child's bedroom set up like a shrine. A small bed with a handmade quilt. A bookshelf filled with children's books, a rocking chair with a teddy bear seated on it. Everything was meticulously clean, no dust, no cobwebs, unlike the rest of the attic. On the bedside table sat a framed photograph. Maria moved closer, picking it up carefully. The photo showed a young girl, perhaps 6 or 7, with Eleanor's dark hair and Jonathan's serious eyes. She wore a red dress with white collar, her expression solemn. Maria had never seen this child in any of the family photos downstairs. The Hendersons had 2 adult children, a son and a daughter, both in their 30s. Who was this girl? As she replaced the photograph, Maria noticed a newspaper clipping tucked beneath the frame. Yellowed with age, the headline still legible: "Local child missing, police suspect foul play." Before she could read further, a noise from below made her freeze, the unmistakable sound of the front door opening. Maria quickly turned off the attic light and hurried down the stairs, closing the door behind her. She had just grabbed the vacuum cleaner when footsteps sounded on the main staircase. "Hello?" Jonathan Henderson's voice, tight with tension. "Is someone here?" "It's just me, Mr. Henderson," Maria called, her heart racing. "Maria, I'm finishing up now." He appeared at the top of the stairs, his face unusually pale. "I thought you'd be gone by now. I'm sorry, I'm running a little late." "Just wrapping up." She gestured to the vacuum. His gaze moved to the attic door, then back to her. "Did you go up there?" Maria hesitated, but only briefly. "No, sir. Mrs. Henderson told me that area doesn't need cleaning." Something in his posture relaxed slightly. "Good, that's good." He checked his watch. "It's nearly 10:30. You should go." As Maria gathered her things, she noticed Jonathan standing perfectly still, watching her every move. His usual politeness had vanished, replaced by something vigilant, almost predatory. "I thought you and Mrs. Henderson were in Philadelphia," she said, attempting normalcy. "Change of plans," he replied curtly. Eleanor stayed. "I came back for some documents." He followed her downstairs, hovering as she collected her supplies and coat. At the front door, he handed her the usual payment in cash. "We won't need you next Friday," he said. "Perhaps not the following week either. Eleanor will let you know the dismissal was clear." Maria nodded, stepping outside into the cool night air. As she walked to her car, she felt Jonathan's eyes on her back. When she glanced over her shoulder, she saw him silhouetted in the doorway, watching until she drove away. That night, as she lay in bed reviewing the strange encounter, Maria's phone chimed again. Another text from the unknown number. "You shouldn't have gone up there. Now you've woken her." Maria called in sick to her other cleaning jobs the next day. After dropping Miguel at school, she drove to the Danville Public Library, a modern building downtown that housed archives of the local newspaper, the Danville Gazette. The librarian, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a nameplate reading Judith, helped her navigate the digital archive system. "I'm looking for an article about a missing child," Maria explained. "Probably from the Henderson family. I'm not sure of the exact date, but maybe 15 to 20 years ago." Judith's expression changed subtly. "The Henderson case? That would be longer ago, in 1987, I believe." Maria was surprised by the librarian's immediate recognition. "You remember it?" "Everyone who lived in Danville then remembers Emily Henderson," Judith said quietly. "It was the biggest story to hit our town in decades. Such a tragedy." She typed something into the computer. "Here, I've pulled up the initial articles." There were many follow-ups over the years. The screen displayed a headline: "7-year-old Danville girl missing. Community launches search." The article featured the same solemn photograph Maria had seen in the attic. According to the report, Emily Henderson had vanished from her bedroom on March 15, 1987. No signs of forced entry were found. The parents, Jonathan and Eleanor, then in their 20s, had been home all night but heard nothing unusual. Maria scrolled through subsequent articles. Massive searches organized. Interviews with neighbors, suspicions cast on a local handyman later cleared. The case growing cold despite the family's substantial reward offering. One article, dated 6 months after the disappearance, caught her attention. "Henderson family divided by tragedy. Mother insists daughter is still in the house." The piece described Eleanor's apparent breakdown, her insistence that Emily had never left their home, that she could hear her daughter laughing at night. "Eleanor Henderson has been hospitalized for psychiatric evaluation," the article stated. Friends expressed concern that the stress of the ongoing investigation has proven too much for the young mother. "Did they ever find her?" Maria asked Judith. The librarian shook her head. No body was ever recovered. Eventually it faded from the headlines. The Hendersons had 2 more children in the 1990s. Life went on, I suppose. Maria thanked Judith and left, more unsettled than before. As she sat in her car, she thought about the immaculate child's room in the attic. The teddy bear positioned just so. The bed neatly made, as if awaiting its occupant's return. After 38 years, Eleanor was still waiting for Emily to come home. But what about the laugh Maria had heard? And those text messages? Her phone chimed, as if summoned by her thoughts. The same unknown number. "She wants to play with you tonight. At 3 a.m. Don't be late." Maria's hands trembled as she started her car. She should block this number. Forget about the Hendersons and their lost daughter. Find other clients to replace them. Instead, she found herself driving past 1847 Oakwood Drive. The house looked peaceful in the daylight, giving no hint of the secrets it held. Jonathan's car was missing from the driveway, but Eleanor's silver Lexus was parked near the garage. On impulse, Maria pulled to the curb and walked to the front door. She rang the bell before she could change her mind. Eleanor answered, her expression shifting from surprise to wariness. "Maria, is something wrong? I need to talk to you, Mrs. Henderson, about Emily." The color drained from Eleanor's face. She glanced past Maria to the street, then stepped back. "Come in." The house felt different in daylight, less intimidating, more melancholy. Eleanor led her to the kitchen, where a half-finished cup of tea sat on the counter. "How do you know about Emily?" Eleanor asked, her voice carefully controlled. Maria decided honesty was her only option. "I went into the attic last night. I saw the room, the photograph. And I've heard the laugh, Mrs. Henderson. Twice now when the vacuum stopped working." Eleanor stared at her for a long moment. "What exactly did you hear?" "A child laughing. High-pitched, just for a second or two." Eleanor closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, they shone with unshed tears. "You think I'm crazy? Everyone does. Even Jonathan, though he'd never say it." "I don't think you're crazy," Maria said gently. But I received strange text messages. Someone telling me I've woken her, saying she wants to play with me tonight at 3 a.m. Eleanor's teacup clattered against the counter. "Let me see." Maria showed her the messages. Eleanor's hands shook as she handed the phone back. "It's not Jonathan," she said firmly. "He'd never acknowledge this." "Acknowledge what, exactly?" Eleanor seemed to be struggling with herself. Finally, she sighed. "I should have told you from the beginning. The others, they all left after experiencing things. Noises, items moved. The vacuum cleaner dying in that same spot." "What happened to Emily?" Maria asked softly. "I don't know," Eleanor whispered. "That's the truth. But 3 months after she disappeared, I started hearing her laugh. Always at night, always from the attic. Jonathan thought I was having a breakdown. He wanted me hospitalized again." Her voice hardened. "I learned to stop telling him what I heard in the room in the attic. I set it up a year after she vanished. Jonathan doesn't go up there. He can't bear it." She met Maria's gaze directly. "Emily was never found, Maria. No body, no evidence, nothing. But I know she's still in this house. Somehow she's still here." Maria drove home in a daze, Eleanor's words echoing in her mind. The rational part of her insisted she should distance herself from the Hendersons and their tragedy. The text messages were likely from someone playing a cruel prank, perhaps one of the adult Henderson children who resented the shrine to their lost sister. Yet she couldn't shake the memory of that laugh, childlike but unsettling, emanating from behind a door that should have concealed only forgotten belongings. Miguel was home when she arrived, hunched over calculus homework at the kitchen table. At 17, he was already taller than Maria, with her dark eyes and his father's square jaw. Carlos had been gone for 8 years now, returned to El Salvador after their divorce, his occasional calls becoming increasingly rare. "Hey, Mom," Miguel said without looking up. "There's mail for you on the counter." Maria sorted through the envelopes, bills mostly, and a brochure from the community college where Miguel hoped to start classes next fall. "Everything okay?" he asked, finally noticing her distracted state. "Just tired," she replied, forcing a smile. "Busy day." Miguel returned to his equations, and Maria retreated to her bedroom, closing the door. She sat on the edge of her bed, staring at her phone. No new messages from the unknown number. What if she simply ignored the text? Pretended she'd never seen the attic room, never heard the laugh? But something about Eleanor's pain had touched her. The woman had spent nearly 4 decades wondering what had happened to her daughter, clinging to strange sounds in the night because they were her only connection to Emily. Maria thought of Miguel, how she would feel if he vanished without a trace. Wouldn't she also cling to any sign, no matter how small, that he still existed somewhere? Her decision made, she set her alarm for 2:30 a.m. When it chimed, Maria woke instantly, her heart already racing. She dressed quietly, careful not to wake Miguel. She left a note on the kitchen counter, "Early client emergency, back by breakfast," in case he woke before she returned. The streets of Danville were deserted as she drove to Oakwood Drive. No lights shone from the neighboring houses when she parked a block away from the Henderson home. Using the keys Eleanor had given her, Maria let herself in, punching in the alarm code with trembling fingers. The house was dark except for the dim security lights along the baseboards. She stood in the foyer listening. Nothing but the subtle creaks of an old house at night. Maria climbed the stairs slowly, wincing at every creak beneath her feet. The upstairs hallway stretched before her, the attic door a darker shadow at its end. Her watch read 2:58 a.m. Taking a deep breath, Maria approached the attic door and turned the knob. It opened without resistance. The stairway beyond was pitch black. She fumbled for the light switch, finding it exactly where she remembered. The single bulb cast more shadows than light as she ascended the stairs. The attic looked unchanged, the same shrouded furniture, the same boxes, the same child's room at the far end. Maria approached it slowly, her footsteps muffled by dust. The teddy bear sat in the rocking chair, glass eyes gleaming in the dim light. The bed remained perfectly made, the quilt smooth and unwrinkled. Maria's watch beeped softly. 3 a.m. "Hello?" she called, her voice barely above a whisper. "Emily? I'm Maria. I'm here because you wanted to play." Silence answered her. Maria felt foolish suddenly, standing in an attic at 3 a.m. talking to an empty room. What had she expected? She was turning to leave when she noticed something on the bed that hadn't been there before. A small leather-bound book. A diary. Maria picked it up carefully. The cover was worn, the pages yellowed with age. Inside, childish handwriting filled the pages. The entries dated March 1987. The final entry was dated March 14th, the day before Emily disappeared. "Daddy came to my room again tonight. I pretended to be asleep, but he knew I wasn't. He said I'm special, his special girl. I don't like the special games. They hurt. I told him I would tell Mom if he didn't stop. He said no one would believe me because I make up stories, but I'm going to tell anyway. Tomorrow, I'm not afraid of him anymore." Maria's blood ran cold. She read the entry again, hoping she'd misunderstood. But the words remained unchanged, their implications horrifying. Behind her, the attic stairs creaked. Maria whirled around, the diary clutched to her chest. Jonathan Henderson stood at the top of the stairs, still wearing his business suit despite the hour. "I had a feeling you might come back," he said, his voice eerily calm. "Curiosity is such a dangerous trait, Maria." She held up the diary. "Did you kill her?" A flicker of surprise crossed his face. "Is that what you think happened?" He moved into the attic, his footsteps deliberate. "I love my daughter. This diary is full of a disturbed child's fantasies," he interrupted. Emily was troubled, prone to lying, to creating elaborate stories. Eleanor indulged her too much. He took another step forward. Maria retreated until her back pressed against the wall beside the child's bed. "What happened to her, Mr. Henderson?" His expression hardened. "I told the police then what I'll tell you now. I went to check on her before bed. She was sleeping peacefully. By morning, she was gone. No signs of forced entry. No signs of struggle. But the laugh is Eleanor's delusion. Nothing more." His voice grew sharper. "My wife has never accepted that Emily is gone. She hears things that aren't there, sees things that don't exist. Then why keep this shrine?" Maria gestured to the carefully maintained bedroom. "Why preserve everything exactly as it was?" "Because dismantling it would destroy Eleanor completely," he replied. "And despite everything, I do love my wife." He extended his hand. "Give me the diary, Maria. It contains nothing but the confused writings of a troubled child. It has no place in the present." Maria clutched the book tighter. "I don't believe you." Jonathan's expression shifted, something cold and calculating replacing his usual polite demeanor. "That's unfortunate. For both of us." As he took another step toward her, a high-pitched laugh suddenly filled the attic, the same laugh Maria had heard by the vacuum cleaner, but louder now, more deliberate. Jonathan froze, his face draining of color. The laugh came again, followed by a child's voice. Faint but distinct. "Tell her, Daddy. Tell her our special game." Maria watched in horror as Jonathan staggered backward, his eyes wide with fear. "This isn't real," he muttered. "You're not real." "Tell her where you put me," the voice continued, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere. "Tell her about the cellar wall." Jonathan covered his ears. "Stop it. Stop this right now." "You said no one would believe me," the voice persisted. "But someone finally does." The rocking chair began to move. Slowly at first, then faster, the teddy bear tumbling to the floor. Jonathan turned and fled, stumbling down the attic stairs. Maria heard his footsteps pounding through the house, followed by the distant slam of the front door. The rocking chair gradually slowed to a stop. The voice fell silent. The attic returned to its musty stillness. With trembling hands, Maria opened the diary again, turning to the final pages. After the March 14th entry, the next page had been torn out. But on the inside back cover, barely visible in the dim light, was a child's drawing of a house with a stick figure buried beneath it. Words written in crayon, "Daddy's secret place." Maria descended the attic stairs carefully, the diary tucked securely in her bag. The house was silent again, but differently now, as if it were holding its breath, waiting. She considered calling the police immediately. But what would she tell them? That she heard a child's ghost accuse her father of murder. That a rocking chair moved by itself. They would dismiss her as easily as they had dismissed Eleanor's claims decades ago. She needed evidence, something concrete, the cellar. The voice had mentioned a cellar wall. Maria had cleaned the main floors of the house thoroughly over the past weeks, but the Henderson's cellar hadn't been part of her duties. Eleanor had mentioned it only in passing, a damp space used for storage and the occasional load of laundry. Finding the cellar door took several minutes of searching. It was tucked away in a back hallway near the kitchen, a heavy wooden door with an old-fashioned iron latch. Maria's phone flashlight illuminated steep wooden stairs descending into darkness. The air that rose to meet her was cool and musty, with an underlying dampness that spoke of poor ventilation. At the bottom of the stairs she found a light switch. A single bare bulb revealed a large room with concrete floors and fieldstone walls. Metal shelving units lined one wall stacked with holiday decorations and camping equipment. A washer and dryer stood in one corner, beside them a deep utility sink. Nothing seemed immediately suspicious. Maria moved slowly around the perimeter, examining the walls. The fieldstone was roughly mortared, the work clearly old. Except for one section. On the far wall behind the shelving units, a rectangular area about 6 feet long and 4 feet high showed different mortar, lighter in color, less weathered than the surrounding stone. Maria pushed the metal shelving aside, wincing at the scraping sound it made against the concrete floor. She ran her fingers over the newer section of wall. The mortar here was smoother, more carefully applied. What had the voice said? Tell her about the cellar wall. A chill ran up Maria's spine as understanding dawned. If Emily's body was behind this wall. The sound of the cellar door opening interrupted her thoughts. Footsteps on the wooden stairs. Maria looked around frantically for somewhere to hide, but the cellar offered no convenient spaces. She pressed herself against the wall beside the staircase, hoping the shadows would conceal her. Eleanor Henderson descended slowly, one hand trailing along the railing. She wore a silk robe over a nightgown, her feet bare against the cold concrete. "Maria?" she called softly. "Are you down here?" Maria stepped forward, revealing herself. "Mrs. Henderson." Eleanor didn't seem surprised. "I heard noises. I thought it might be you." Her gaze moved to the shelving unit Maria had pushed aside, then to the section of wall behind it. Something like recognition flickered in her eyes. "You found it," she said, her voice hollow. "Found what?" Maria asked, though she feared she already knew the answer. Eleanor approached the wall, running her palm over the lighter mortar. "I've been blind for so long. Willfully blind." She turned to Maria, her expression haunted. "Jonathan was working on the cellar the week Emily disappeared. Repairing the wall," he said. "It had been damaged by water seepage. Mrs. Henderson." "I wanted to believe him," Eleanor continued, as if Maria hadn't spoken. "Even when the police suggested, even when I found Emily's diary, I couldn't accept what it meant." Her voice broke. "He was my husband, the father of my children. How could I believe he was capable of—" She stopped abruptly, her gaze moving past Maria to the staircase. Maria turned to see Jonathan standing there, his expression unreadable in the dim light. "Eleanor," he said quietly, "what are you doing?" Eleanor straightened, something hardening in her face. "What I should have done 38 years ago. I'm finding our daughter, Jonathan." He descended the remaining stairs slowly. "You're confused, darling. You've been taking those pills again, haven't you? The ones that make you imagine things." "I heard her tonight," Eleanor said. "For the first time in years, I heard Emily clearly. She told me to come down here." She gestured to the wall. "To look behind the wall you repaired so carefully." Jonathan's gaze flickered briefly to Maria, then back to his wife. "There's nothing behind that wall except earth and stone. You're having another episode, Eleanor. Let me help you back to bed." "I found Emily's diary," Maria interjected, pulling it from her bag. "In the attic. The last entry is the product of a disturbed child's imagination," Jonathan finished for her. "I've explained this to the police, to psychiatrists, to Eleanor. Emily was troubled. She created fantasies, told elaborate lies. Lies convincing enough that you killed her?" Eleanor's voice was stronger now, accusatory. Jonathan's calm facade cracked slightly. "This is absurd. I've endured your delusions for decades, Eleanor, but I won't be accused in my own home by my wife and ... and the cleaning woman." He spat the last words. "Then you won't mind if we look behind this wall," Maria said, stepping closer to Eleanor. "If there's nothing to find, as you say, then proving it should put Mrs. Henderson's mind at ease. I'm not tearing apart my cellar wall based on a ghost story and a cleaning lady's amateur detective work," Jonathan snapped. "This has gone far enough." He reached into his pocket and withdrew his phone. "I'm calling Dr. Winters. Eleanor needs to be sedated." As he dialed, the single light bulb overhead flickered, then went out completely. The cellar plunged into darkness. "Damn fuse," Jonathan muttered. The blue glow of his phone screen illuminated his face from below, casting strange shadows. And then that laugh, high and childlike, echoed through the darkness. Jonathan dropped his phone, the screen going dark as it clattered to the floor. "No," he whispered. "Not again." The laugh came once more, followed by that same small voice. "They know, Daddy. They know about our special game. They know what you did. Stop it." Jonathan shouted into the darkness. "You're not real. You can't be real." Maria felt Eleanor's hand find hers, squeezing tightly. "I told you I wasn't afraid anymore," the voice continued. "Remember? The night before you put me in the wall? I said I would tell Mom, and you said no one would believe me." In the darkness, Maria heard Jonathan's ragged breathing, his footsteps stumbling back toward the stairs. "But I've been waiting, Daddy. Waiting for someone to listen." A sudden crash from across the cellar made them all jump. The metal shelving unit had fallen, its contents scattering across the concrete floor. The light flickered back on, revealing Jonathan halfway up the stairs, his face contorted with terror. When he saw Maria and Eleanor watching him, something in his expression changed, the fear replaced by a cold calculation. "This proves nothing," he said, his voice steadier now. "Old houses make noises. Power fluctuates. Elves fall." "The police will decide that," Eleanor replied, pulling her phone from her robe pocket. "I'm calling them now." Jonathan lunged down the stairs toward her, but Maria stepped between them. In the struggle, Eleanor's phone skittered across the floor. "Don't be foolish, Eleanor," Jonathan hissed. "Think about what this will do to our family, to our living children." Eleanor met his gaze unflinchingly. "I've protected you for too long. Not anymore." Maria retrieved the fallen phone and handed it to Eleanor, who dialed with shaking fingers. "Yes," she said after a moment. "I need to report a murder. 1847 Oakwood Drive." She paused, listening. 38 years ago. My husband killed our daughter and buried her in our cellar wall." Jonathan slumped onto the stairs, his head in his hands. "You have no proof," he muttered. But the fight had gone out of his voice. The light flickered again, but remained on. The cellar had fallen silent, no laughter, no child's voice. "Emily?" Eleanor called softly. "Are you still here?" Only silence answered, but Maria felt a subtle shift in the air, as if a long-held breath had finally been released. Police cars lined Oakwood Drive by dawn, their lights bathing the elegant Victorian homes in alternating red and blue. Neighbors gathered on their front lawns in bathrobes and slippers, watching as officers strung crime scene tape around the Henderson property. Maria sat in the back of an ambulance, a shock blanket draped over her shoulders despite the mild morning air. She'd already given her statement twice, once to the responding officers, once to a detective who regarded her with barely concealed skepticism. "Let me get this straight," he had said, flipping through his notes. "You broke into your employer's home at 3 a.m. because you received text messages from an unknown number telling you to come play?" Put it that way, it sounded absurd. Maria had shown him the messages, explained about the vacuum cleaner, the laugh, the diary. With each detail, his expression had grown more dubious. Only the diary itself seemed to interest him, and even then, he'd suggested it might be a forgery, a prop in an elaborate scheme. "What possible scheme?" Maria had asked, exasperated. "Why would I make any of this up?" The detective hadn't answered directly. "We'll need your fingerprints," he'd said instead, "to eliminate them from any we find in the attic or cellar." Now she watched as a forensic team entered the house, carrying equipment and cameras. Jonathan had been taken to the police station for formal questioning. Eleanor sat in a police car nearby, speaking with a female officer, her face pale but composed. Miguel had called twice, worried by her absence and the cryptic note she'd left. Maria had assured him she was fine, involved in a situation at a client's home that required her presence. She promised to explain everything later. By mid-morning, word had spread through Danville. Local news vans parked alongside the police cars, reporters setting up camera equipment on the sidewalk. The cursed Henderson house, one headline already blared on a news website. Child's bodies sought in 38-year-old cold case. A young officer approached Maria, offering a cup of coffee. "Detective Ramirez wants to speak with you again," he said apologetically. Maria nodded, too tired to protest. She followed him to an unmarked police car where Detective Ramirez waited, a manila folder open on the dashboard. "We've been doing some background checking," he said without preamble. "Jonathan Henderson has no criminal record, not even a parking ticket. Respected surgeon, generous donor to local charities, pillar of the community." "Appearances can be deceiving," Maria replied. "Indeed." His gaze was sharp. "You've worked for the Hendersons for less than a month. Before that, you cleaned homes for several affluent families in Danville. No complaints, good references." Maria waited, unsure where this was leading. "We checked the phone records for those text messages you showed me," he continued. "They came from a burner phone purchased with cash at a convenience store 3 days ago. I didn't send those messages to myself, if that's what you're suggesting." Ramirez closed the folder. Mrs. Henderson tells a similar story, hearing her daughter's voice, seeing objects move. She believes Emily's spirit led you both to the cellar wall. He didn't need to add that he found this implausible. His tone said it all. Are you going to open the wall? Maria asked. We're waiting for ground-penetrating radar equipment, he replied. If there's something or someone behind that wall, we'll find it without destroying potential evidence. A commotion near the house drew their attention. Eleanor had emerged from the police car and was speaking animatedly with the officers guarding the entrance. She wants to retrieve personal items, Ramirez explained. We've denied her request for now. As they watched, Eleanor broke away from the officers and approached their car. Ramirez sighed but rolled down his window. Mrs. Henderson, please return to... You found something, didn't you? Eleanor interrupted, her gaze intense. In the attic. Something besides the diary, Ramirez hesitated, then nodded slightly. A crawl space behind the chimney, concealed by one of the storage trunks. What was in it? Maria asked. Children's clothing. A backpack. Items consistent with what Emily was reported to be wearing when she disappeared. He studied Eleanor's face. You didn't know about this space? She shook her head. I maintained the bedroom area, but I never moved the storage pieces. I couldn't bear to disturb anything. That might be yours. Jonathan would have known about it, Maria said quietly. If he was trying to make it look like Emily had run away, Ball quotes Ramirez didn't confirm or deny this reasoning. Instead, he asked Eleanor, when did you first suspect your husband might be involved in your daughter's disappearance? I found her diary a week after she vanished, Eleanor replied, her voice strained. Hidden in her favorite book, the last entry. It suggested inappropriate behavior. When I confronted Jonathan, he became enraged. Said Emily was making things up, that she needed psychological help. But you stayed with him, Ramirez observed, his tone neutral. Eleanor's expression hardened. I had 2 other children to protect. No income of my own. No proof beyond the word of a child who wasn't there to defend herself. She looked away, and part of me couldn't believe it. Didn't want to believe it. A technician approached them, speaking quietly to Ramirez, who nodded and turned back to Eleanor and Maria. They're ready to begin scanning the cellar wall, he said. It will take some time to analyze the results. I'd suggest you both find somewhere to rest. This will be a long day. As the technician walked away, Maria's phone chimed with a text notification. She pulled it out, expecting Miguel again. Instead, she saw the unknown number. Thank you for listening when no one else would. Maria showed the message to Eleanor, whose eyes filled with tears. Is it really her? She whispered. After all this time? I don't know, Maria replied honestly. But something wanted the truth to come out. Something helped us find it. They watched in silence as the forensic team carried their equipment into the house. The first steps in a process that might finally bring Emily Henderson home. The ground-penetrating radar confirmed what Emily's voice had claimed. Something was indeed buried behind the newer section of cellar wall. By evening, a team of forensic specialists had carefully begun removing the stones and mortar, documenting each step with photographs and video. Maria had gone home briefly to explain the situation to Miguel, who had been shocked but supportive. You did the right thing, Mom, he'd said, hugging her tightly. You helped find the truth. Now she sat with Eleanor in a hotel room near the police station. Eleanor had been advised not to return to her home, not only because it was an active crime scene, but also because Jonathan had been released on bail pending further investigation. I don't understand how they could let him go, Eleanor said, pacing the small room. After everything we told them, after what they found in the attic, Detective Ramirez explained that they need more evidence, Maria replied. Without Emily's, without confirmation of what's behind that wall, they can't hold him on murder charges. But the diary could have been written by anyone, according to Jonathan's lawyer. Maria sighed. They've taken it for handwriting analysis, but that will take time. Eleanor sank onto the edge of the bed, suddenly looking every one of her 64 years. I've lived with him for almost 4 decades, never allowing myself to fully believe what I suspected. Her voice cracked. What kind of mother does that make me? A human one, Maria said gently. You did what you thought was necessary to survive, to protect your other children. But Emily would understand, Maria finished for her. She found a way to be heard, eventually. That's what matters now. Eleanor wiped away tears with the back of her hand. Do you think she's still there? In the house? Before Maria could answer, her phone rang. Detective Ramirez. We've completed the excavation, he said without preamble when she answered. I think you and Mrs. Henderson should come to the station. 30 minutes later, they sat in a stark interview room. Ramirez across from them, a file folder between them on the metal table. The remains we recovered are consistent with a female child, approximately 7 years old, he began. His professional tones softened slightly with compassion. DNA testing will confirm identity, but given the location and circumstances, it's Emily, Eleanor said. It wasn't a question. Ramirez nodded. Preliminary examination indicates blunt force trauma to the skull as the cause of death. We also recovered fabric matching the description of the nightgown Emily was last seen wearing. Eleanor closed her eyes briefly, absorbing this information. There's more, Ramirez continued. The forensic team found something else in the wall cavity, something that might explain those text messages. He opened the folder and withdrew a plastic evidence bag containing an old-fashioned tape recorder, the kind that used cassettes. This was placed with the remains, Ramirez explained. It's a common model from the 1980s. When our technicians examined it, they discovered it was still functional with a tape inside. What's on it? Maria asked, already suspecting the answer. A child's laughter, recorded on a loop. Ramirez replied. And a message, Daddy, I'm not afraid anymore. I'm going to tell. Eleanor pressed a hand to her mouth. Emily's voice. We believe so, yes. Ramirez leaned forward. Mrs. Henderson, did your daughter have access to a tape recorder? She received one for Christmas in 1986, Eleanor said slowly. She was always recording little songs, messages for her grandparents. Jonathan thought it was a waste of money, all those cassette tapes. We think Emily may have recorded this message shortly before her disappearance, Ramirez said. Perhaps as evidence or a form of protection. But how does this explain the text messages? Maria asked. Or the sounds we heard in the house? The recorder was modified, Ramirez explained. Someone added a wireless transmitter, possibly years after Emily's death. The kind that could be triggered remotely. Jonathan, Eleanor breathed. He has an engineering background. He could have modified it, but why? Maria asked. Why create evidence against himself? Not evidence, Eleanor said, comprehension dawning, gaslighting. A way to make me believe I was hearing Emily's ghost when it was just a recording. To convince me and everyone else that I was mentally unstable. Her voice hardened. He's been using my grief against me for decades. Ramirez nodded. That's our theory as well. As for the text messages, he turned to Maria. We traced the purchases made with the credit card Jonathan Henderson used 2 days before you received the first text. Among them was a prepaid phone from a convenience store on Route 15. He sent those messages? Maria asked incredulously. Why would he direct me to find evidence against himself? We believe he was trying to discredit both of you, Ramirez explained. If you claimed to be following instructions from a ghost received via text message, who would believe anything else you said? He could paint you as conspirators or mentally unbalanced, but it backfired, Eleanor said, because Maria was brave enough to investigate. To believe what she heard and saw, we've arrested Jonathan Henderson for the murder of Emily Henderson, Ramirez concluded. With the physical evidence we've recovered, plus the diary and the recorder, the district attorney is confident the charges will stick this time. As they left the police station, Eleanor suddenly stopped, turning to Maria. Do you think it was all just the recorder? All these years, was I only hearing a tape recording triggered by that device? Maria considered the question carefully. I think Jonathan created the recording to make you doubt yourself, but I also think Emily found a way to use his own trick against him, to finally reveal the truth. Eleanor nodded slowly. The vacuum cleaner, the rocking chair, the shelf falling at just the right moment. Those weren't from a recording. No, Maria agreed. Those were something else entirely. The Danville Gazette ran the headline on its front page the next morning. Local doctor arrested for 1987 murder of daughter. Beneath it, a side-by-side photograph of Emily's school picture from decades ago, alongside a recent portrait of Jonathan in his surgical scrubs. By noon, national news outlets had picked up the story. Vans from CNN and Fox News joined the local stations outside the courthouse where Jonathan Henderson's arraignment was scheduled. For 2 p.m. Maria watched the coverage from her apartment, simultaneously relieved and disturbed by how quickly the case had captured public attention. Eleanor had been swarmed by reporters when leaving her hotel that morning, requiring a police escort to reach the courthouse. Miguel sat beside Maria on their worn sofa, scrolling through social media on his phone. You're trending, Mom, he said, showing her a hashtag cleaning lady detective. That's ridiculous, Maria muttered. I didn't detect anything. I just listened. That's more than anyone else did for 38 years, Miguel pointed out. Maria's phone rang Detective Ramirez again. I wanted to give you a heads up, he said when she answered. Henderson's attorney is attempting to build a defense around you. Me? Maria asked, startled. How? They're suggesting you planted the diary and collaborated with Eleanor to frame Jonathan. They're pointing to your immigration status, implying you might have been blackmailing the family. Maria felt a cold knot form in her stomach. That's absurd. I've been a legal resident for 20 years, a citizen for 12, I know, Ramirez assured her. And we have Eleanor's statement that she found the diary decades ago. But you should be prepared for some uncomfortable questions and possibly some media attention. After the call ended, Maria sat quietly processing this news. Mom? Miguel asked, concern evident in his voice. What's wrong? Jonathan's lawyers are trying to blame me, she explained. They're suggesting I'm trying to frame him. Miguel's expression hardened. That's messed up. After you help find the truth about what happened to his daughter, people will believe what they want to believe, Maria said wearily, especially when it comes to immigrants. Her phone chimed with a text notification, not from the unknown number this time, but from Eleanor. Don't worry about Jonathan's accusations. Truth is on our side. Emily is on our side. A knock at their apartment door startled them both. Miguel peered through the peephole, then turned to Maria with wide eyes. It's a news crew, he whispered. Channel 7. More knocks, followed by a woman's voice. Miss Alvarez. Diane Reynolds from Channel 7 News. We'd like to get your statement about the Henderson case. Maria sighed. Tell them no comment, and don't open the door. Over the next few hours, 3 more news crews appeared. Maria's phone filled with voicemails from reporters seeking exclusive interviews. She ignored them all, focusing instead on helping Miguel with his college applications, a welcome distraction from the chaos. By evening, Eleanor called. The arraignment was postponed, she reported. Jonathan's attorneys requested more time to prepare his defense, but the judge denied bail. He'll remain in custody. That's something, at least, Maria said. The district attorney wants to meet with both of us tomorrow, Eleanor continued, to go over our statements again. Apparently, Jonathan is now claiming the recorder was a toy Emily used to play pranks, and that I planted it in the wall years ago during one of my episodes. But the remains could have been placed there by anyone, according to him. Even by me. Eleanor's voice cracked. He's trying to paint me as a mentally unstable wife who killed our daughter and framed him decades later. The evidence doesn't support that, Maria assured her. The forensic analysis will prove Emily died around the time she disappeared, not years later. I know, Eleanor said. But Jonathan has powerful friends, expensive lawyers, and he's very convincing when he wants to be. After they hung up, Maria found herself drawn to her laptop, searching for more information about the case. She discovered online forums already devoted to debating Emily's murder, with disturbing threads questioning both her and Eleanor's credibility. One comment caught her attention. Cleaning lady with financial problems suddenly finds evidence in rich doctor's home. Convenient timing much? Another replied, and the mother stayed with the killer for 38 years. Either she was complicit or she's making it up now for the insurance money. Maria closed the laptop, stomach churning. The world was so quick to doubt, to assume the worst. Her phone chimed again, a text from an unfamiliar number. For a moment she hesitated, wondering if Jonathan had somehow acquired another burner phone. But the message wasn't threatening. This is Judith from the library. Please call me when you can. I have information about Emily Henderson that might help. Maria remembered the kind-eyed librarian who had helped her research the case. She called immediately. Thank you for getting back to me, Judith said when she answered. I've been following the news about the Hendersons. It's brought back so many memories. You mentioned you might have information? Yes. After you left that day, I kept thinking about Emily. I remembered that her best friend was in my daughter's class, Susan Baker. They were inseparable. Judith paused. Susan still lives in Danville. She's a teacher at the elementary school now. You think she might know something about Emily? Maria asked. I think she might know something about Jonathan, Judith replied carefully. There were rumors back then. Nothing specific, nothing reported, just whispers among the mothers. Children who didn't want to have playdates at the Henderson house. Susan was one of the few Emily was allowed to invite over regularly. Maria felt a chill. Did Susan ever say anything? Not to me, Judith said. But with everything coming out now, maybe she would speak to you. I've already mentioned you to her. She's willing to meet tomorrow if you'd like. Yes, Maria said immediately. Definitely. As she ended the call, Maria noticed Miguel watching her intently from the kitchen doorway. More detective work? He asked, his tone light but his expression serious. Just trying to help Emily, Maria replied. And Eleanor? Miguel nodded, understanding in his eyes. You always say we have a responsibility to speak for those who can't speak for themselves. Maria smiled sadly, thinking of that small voice in the attic. Emily had found a way to speak after 38 years. Now it was up to the living to make sure her voice was finally heard and believed. The elementary school playground was empty when Maria arrived the following afternoon. As classes had ended for the day, most students already gone. A few teachers remained, gathering papers and preparing for tomorrow's lessons. Susan Baker waited on a bench beneath an old oak tree, grading papers with a red pen. She was in her mid-40s, with short brown hair and glasses perched on her nose. When she spotted Maria, she set her work aside. "Miss Alvarez?" she asked, extending her hand. "Judith told me you wanted to talk about Emily." Maria nodded, taking a seat beside her. "I understand you were friends as children." Susan's expression softened with old grief. "Best friends. We met in kindergarten. Emily was so bright, always making up stories, imagining adventures." She looked down at her hands. "I never believed she ran away. She wouldn't have left without telling me." "Did she ever say anything to you about her father?" Maria asked carefully. "Anything that concerned you?" Susan was quiet for a long moment. "We were only 7. I didn't understand everything then. But looking back," she took a deep breath. "Emily told me her daddy had special games he played only with her. Games that made her uncomfortable, that she wasn't allowed to talk about." "Did you tell anyone?" "I told my mother. She spoke to Emily's teacher, who reported it to the school counselor. But Dr. Henderson was so respected in the community. The teacher was told not to pursue unfounded allegations against a prominent family." Susan's voice hardened. 2 weeks later, Emily was gone. "And after she disappeared?" "The police questioned me, but I was too scared to repeat what Emily had told me. My mother tried to explain what I'd said before, but ... double quotes, she shrugged helplessly. No one seemed to want to believe it." Maria nodded, understanding all too well how powerful men could escape consequences. "Would you be willing to make a formal statement now? It could help the prosecution's case against Dr. Henderson." "I've already contacted the district attorney's office," Susan replied. "I have an appointment tomorrow morning. I'm not scared anymore." Her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "I've carried this guilt for 38 years. Wondering if I could have saved her by speaking up sooner." "You were a child," Maria said gently. "The adults failed Emily, not you." Susan wiped at her eyes. "There's something else. Something I've never told anyone." She reached into her bag and withdrew a small envelope. "Emily gave me this the day before she disappeared. She made me promise not to open it unless something happened to her. I was supposed to give it to her mom. But you didn't," Maria guessed. "I was 7 years old," Susan said, defensive yet remorseful. "By the time I remembered it, weeks had passed. The police had searched everywhere. Everyone was saying Emily had run away." She handed the envelope to Maria. "I've kept it all these years, never knowing what to do with it. But now..." double quotes. Maria accepted the envelope with careful hands. It was yellowed with age, the flap sealed with a heart-shaped sticker, written on the front in childish handwriting. "For Mom, from Emily. Important. Have you ever looked inside?" Maria asked. Susan shook her head. "It wasn't meant for me." Maria thanked Susan and took the envelope directly to Detective Ramirez. He opened it carefully in her presence, using gloves to preserve any potential evidence. Inside was a folded piece of lined notebook paper. A child's handwriting filled the page. "Dear Mom, I'm going to tell you about Daddy's special games tonight. If you're reading this, it means something bad happened to me. Daddy said no one would believe me because I make up stories. But this isn't a story. Daddy comes to my room at night when you're sleeping. He says I'm special, not like my brothers and sisters. He touches me in ways that hurt and scare me. I told him to stop, but he won't. I recorded him on my tape recorder. It's in my secret hiding spot behind the chimney in the attic. Please find it. I love you, Mommy. I'm sorry if this makes you sad." Emily Ramirez read the note twice, his professional demeanor slipping slightly. "This corroborates everything," he said finally. "The diary, the recorder, Mrs. Henderson's suspicions. With Susan Baker's testimony as well, ... It should be enough," Maria finished for him, "even against Jonathan Henderson's expensive lawyers." The note, along with Susan's testimony, proved to be the tipping point. Jonathan's carefully constructed defense crumbled as more evidence emerged. 2 more of Emily's former classmates came forward with similar stories of concerning comments she had made about her father. The forensic analysis confirmed that Emily had died around the time of her disappearance, the manner of death consistent with blunt force trauma. Fibers found with her remains matched the Henderson family's living room carpet from 1987 carpet that had been replaced the week after Emily vanished. 3 weeks after Maria's discovery in the attic, Jonathan Henderson pleaded guilty to second-degree murder in exchange for avoiding the death penalty. His sentencing was scheduled for the following month. Eleanor, finally vindicated after decades of being labeled delusional, held a small memorial service for Emily. The community that had once dismissed her concerns now rallied around her, offering belated support and apologies. Maria attended the service with Miguel. They stood at the back of the church, watching as Eleanor placed a teddy bear, the one from the attic rocking chair, beside a photograph of Emily. "Thank you," Eleanor said simply when she spotted Maria afterward. for hearing what no one else would listen to. That night, as Maria prepared for bed, her phone chimed one last time with a text from the unknown number that had started it all. "I can go now. Thank you for bringing me home." She never received another message from that number. The vacuum cleaner never mysteriously died again. The Henderson house eventually sold to a young family, reported no strange occurrences, no childish laughter in the night. But sometimes when Maria passes 1847 Oakwood Drive during her early morning drives to other clients' homes, she glances up at the attic window and whispers a quiet goodbye to the little girl who waited 38 years to be heard, and the laugh that finally led her home.